Welcome back to another episode of Together Sober, where we make survival guides out of our collective stories. I'm really excited today to welcome somebody who I just recently met, but whose story, quite honestly, is going to shake you to the core. Her name is Julie, and for Julie, drinking was her solution to absolutely everything. It was celebrations, it was a coping skill, her reward, her shoulder to cry on, her trauma counselor. It was her best friend until it wasn't. Julie went into treatment when she couldn't stop, even when she wanted to so desperately. It had a hold on her like nothing else. Coming out of recovery, Julie wants women to hear that recovery is not only possible, but it's actually worth the fight. She says sobriety cracks you open and shows you the true person beneath all of the pain. Living in that place, honoring that self, that's where the magic is. And today, Julie is a certified professional recovery coach whose passion for coaching mirrors her passion for her own personal recovery. She found her sobriety in January of 2020. And she embraced the power of connection to help other women in recovery find the authentic self they lost during addiction, trauma, codependency, and perfectionism. Today, she is also a proud parent of 2 children, one of which is on the autism spectrum. And Julie's passion is helping those mamas that need a special and unique understanding with support so that they don't fall victim to the same fate she did. Julie, we are so happy to have you here. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much for having me, Louise. I'm really happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Well, I'm just so excited. This is like the best part about doing a podcast is just, crossing paths with people that maybe you wouldn't have crossed paths with before and finding common ground. And so I'm really, really eager to hear your story today. And I know that our listeners are going to connect with a lot of areas of your story because it's complex. And as you described, with a lot of layers. So I'm going to kind of, shut my mouth for a little bit and hand the virtual mic over to you. But Julie, please just introduce yourself, and we cannot wait to learn from your story.
Oh, well, again, thank you so much, Louise, for having me. Yeah, man, my story has layers. And I think that there's so much power in sharing our stories. And the only reason I'm sober is from other women sharing theirs and making me feel like I was not alone and I wasn't in this struggle by myself. I started off just like I'm everybody else. I'm just like all the other people out there. I do have some definite trauma that not everybody has had to deal with, but at the same token, I think that we all deal with our feelings different and everybody's level of trauma is different and it affects them differently. Mm-hmm. So for me, growing up, I was in an alcoholic household. I had, so I'm predisposed to alcoholism. So there's that.
Yeah.
Is the, I watched it. I learned from it. I was a victim to some pretty horrific situations that were crippling as I was growing up. And for me, the thing is, when in my generation, we're told not to talk about it. I wasn't allowed to talk about it. So that stuff gets held in and that stuff gets pushed down. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I also had situations in my family life where I was the black sheep. I was misunderstood. I was not heard. And I actually did not belong in my family, and I sensed it and I felt it. It's nobody's fault that happened. I mean, for my mother, I feel really bad for her. She was dealing with an alcoholic. Mm-hmm. And she had my sister and they were fully attached. It was her first child. They had that bond. When I came along, I was in the belly. My dad was in active addiction. My mom was protecting all of us. Like she was in full protection mode. I come out colicky and they also learned to put the kid away and just let it cry it out. I had no attachment to my family. Wow. And that's not her fault. She was in survival mode.
Yeah. They do
Um,
what they can do with the tools that they have at the time, right? Yeah.
that's just it, right? And I don't know if I would do any different, you
Mhm.
know? So as I grew up, like I said, I was in this awful spiral that I didn't even know I was in. I was just in survival, and I was pretending to be whoever they would like me to be. So I was a huge people pleaser, perfectionist. I had to get people to like me. We were on welfare. My mom was divorced now, and I had to just fake it so that people would like me.
Hmm.
And it was hard growing up that way. Um, so I was a chameleon. I was really good at pretending. And drinking when I was a teenager was what kind of got me through that, because wow, I had no cares anymore.
Mhm.
Like, I don't have to feel all that. Like, the weight was gone. And so drank a little bit too much, obviously, in your early 20s. But then I got pregnant with my son, and my life changed at
Mm.
that point. I say he saved my life. I
Oh.
honestly do. I think worse would have happened if I didn't do that. So I had my 9 months pregnant with him as well as his sister, and it was awesome. Loved it. I look back on those very fondly because I didn't drink when I was pregnant. But then parenting starts. And here's the thing with parenting.
I'm ready.
The parenting thing is actually not as hard as I thought it would be. It's societal's expectations of us as
Mhm.
moms that was the effing kicker.
Mm.
Like, because to be a good mom, you had to be super fun. You had to have your shit together. You had to be fit. I had to have my body back into shape to
Mhm.
prove that I was, like, worthy.
Yep.
You had to make amazing lunches, and you had to just do all of the things to be a
Mhm.
good mom in
Mhm.
everybody else's mind. To be a good wife, I had to have dinner on the table, but they had to be also healthy dinners, and I had to do all the grocery shopping and all of that. Oh, also, to be a strong woman, I had to have a career, and not just any career, one people would admire. So there's all of it
Yeah.
was just a big fat mess of swirling awesomeness.
Yeah.
And then throw in autism.
Yeah.
So I also had to be able to be okay with autism. I
Mhm.
had to say it didn't hurt. I had to say it was okay. I had to deal with all of that hard stuff. And my husband was gone working the whole time.
Mm.
So it was honestly on me.
Mm.
Um, that was probably, so that's when the kids were younger, and they put them to bed, and the only thing I knew how to do was drink wine at 8 o'clock to just be like, I did it.
So kind of an end of the day reward.
Yeah, I was able to,
Yeah.
and my coping skill, like I
Yeah.
said, my reward, my coping skill.
Yeah.
But then it got worse. So as the time went on, we ended up moving to Kelowna, which is in the Okanagan Valley, Canada, which is also wine country. And I was part of the rosé all day kind of thing. So
Mhm.
not only did I have it at night when the kids went to bed, but it was okay to drink, well, whenever, because somebody else was too.
Mhm.
So, and here's the thing with alcohol. If you drink enough of it, it will get you,
Mm.
period.
Mhm.
So not only did I have the predisposed, but I was drinking enough of it.
Yep. Yep. And then enough is different for everybody.
Enough is different,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Like maybe your 8 o'clock reward coping mechanism, maybe that wouldn't have gotten you there. Who knows? But yeah, I
So,
agree with you. I like how you say that, where it doesn't matter who you are, there is a limit for everybody.
yeah, I truly believe that. And I think that eventually it got to the point that, like, in the mornings, I would have to have a little bit just to get the shakes to go away.
Mm.
And that's, somebody had told me that, like, you need a little bit of hair of the dog. I wish they never told me that, because it actually worked
Mhm.
to get the shakes and everything gone. But yeah, so teenage years happened. And what happened then is the kids don't need you. They don't want you around, right?
Yep.
So, and also they noticed that I wasn't there when I'd have wine. Like, they would notice. They would be like, all of a sudden, she's like, where'd my mom go? So they just didn't want to be around me either. But the company I was working for had also laid off their entire Canadian sales team. And so I didn't have a job. And I was sitting there. My kids didn't want me. Oh my effing God, I don't have a job. Like, all of the things that I'd worked for what do I do? I don't know me. I don't know anything about myself. Like, I don't even know what I like to do. And so all of my childhood trauma decided, hey, you can deal with me now.
Mm.
So it all came up. And the after to deal with the counseling,
Yep.
which that does not work, by the way. You're kind of just wasting your money because then the trauma counseling goes away. But I learned that that was not the way to deal with it. I would try and talk to my husband. He couldn't deal with it. He was not there for me. And so the only thing I knew how to do was drink more. Like, I just need to stuff the pain down, because that's what my brain knew how to do to deal with pain. Is, I know how to get rid of this. You need more wine.
Well, you had established that pattern of behavior for yourself from a teenager. Like, that was the same thing that you were doing, 15 years earlier, or however long, became the same tool, the only tool that you had at that time. I'm curious, it sounds like it was a really challenging time with teenagers being teenagers, losing kind of your identity, part of your identity with your working momness. Was there a moment that everything started bubbling up, or can you kind of describe that, how you experienced the trauma resurfacing?
Yeah, that was, it was, I don't think the alcohol helped, to be honest. I think it was just like, I was trying to push it down and push it down and push it down with alcohol. And it was just like, it started bringing it up. And it was like all these memories started coming up. And I was like, I thought I dealt with this. Like, I thought I dealt with this, but I didn't. And it was bad. And it was, I don't even know how I can actually describe it, because I had to deal with, I was molested by my father. I had to deal with all of those feelings, the not good enough, the shame, the embarrassment, the horribleness of all of that. Speaking about it with my husband, going through just all of that. And I had gotten my dad out of my life when my daughter was born. I was like, you're not in our lives. Like, you're not. I broke the cycle, and I'm so proud of myself for doing that. But still going through, holy shit, there's emotion attached to it. And so that was where the trauma counseling came in. And then going through I didn't have a voice. Like, I didn't do anything to stop that. And I didn't know how. And I had never had a voice until now, to be honest, because I learned how to shut up and hold stuff in. So that's not okay.
Yeah.
So all the trauma comes up. I'm drinking my face off. And my husband is not okay, obviously.
Yeah.
He's normie. He was not like that, but he didn't know what to do with me. And I remember trying to intellectualize myself out of this, because I would do cleanses and I would do everything. I would prove to myself that I'm not an alcoholic.
Yeah.
So, but this time I couldn't do a 30 freaking day cleanse. I couldn't hold together probably 4 days, 5 days. It was getting harder and harder and harder. And I was trying to write down, okay, why am I drinking? I'd sit there with my glass of wine at 10 a.m.
Yeah.
And I'd be writing down, why am I drinking right now? And I tried, like, okay, I can figure this out. I can get this.
It's a math problem and that you can just solve.
Just figure it out, right? It was so not a math problem. And I remember driving down my hill going, I don't want to drink today. Don't want to drink today. And then my brain going, but you're gonna, you're gonna. And it would take me to the liquor store, and there we would go again. So it was like Groundhog Day from hell. And it was hiding it. It was having all these little sneaky things. I had a water bottle full of rosé, like, all the time with me. It was bad. Like, it was bad. It had me. And I remember one day, I was sitting at my desk, looking out the window, drinking wine. And it was like, I swear to God, it was divine intervention. It was totally divine. There's no other way to explain this, because it was just like, call your husband and go to treatment. And I was like, okay. Called, picked up the phone, and I said, I'll go. You set it up right now, I'll go. And that was it. I hung up. And he had it set up. That was a Friday, had it set up for me to be there on a Monday. So we had to leave on a Sunday to get there, because we had ferries and stuff to catch.
Sure.
But here's the thing. I got into treatment on January 27th, 2020. I got out of treatment on March 15th, 2020.
Okay, so if anybody's not familiar with something called COVID, this is literally like 2 weeks after it was declared a world pandemic.
Yeah. And while I'm there, Christian wasn't telling me, my ex-husband wasn't telling me what was going on. All I knew was from people visiting is there was a toilet paper shortage for some reason.
Oh my
But
gosh.
I didn't know. I didn't know what was really going on. And so he's like, I don't want to worry. We'll talk about it when you're back. And I flew to Vancouver from Nanaimo, and the city was like quiet. Everything was really weird. And they told me in treatment, whatever you do, don't isolate, get to meetings, and find a sponsor.
How are you supposed to do that? Because they didn't have it figured out. I mean, now we have it all figured out, right? But they didn't have it figured out.
So again, divine intervention. So I have a friend that was in recovery, and I just was like, I need to find a sponsor. Can you help me? And so she got me in touch with another person, and it was fabulous. So I did get that. The isolation part was actually a blessing in disguise for me. I really needed it. And I was also doing a healing separation from my husband at the time, because when you're in addiction, you do have, like, he would police me. He would have the controlling side, and I would have the addiction side. And I wasn't going back. I didn't want him policing me. I was like, that's not safe for me. So I was staying at my own little condo that I had rented for a few months.
Yeah.
The best thing I ever did for myself was to unlearn the behavior that I had with my husband at that time. But yeah, I came out to COVID, and it was definitely interesting, but I survived it. And here's the thing, if I didn't go at that time, I probably would have drank myself to death in COVID. Something really bad would have happened in COVID. I was not one of those people that had the DUI. I was not the person that had had any accidents or anything like that. I'm sure I dinged my car every now and then when I was parked. But it was a yet. I hadn't done that yet. It was damn well going to happen.
Yeah.
So I am so grateful for the time that I went into treatment and got all of that sorted out. And that's when I got to deal with my trauma. So I went to treatment, and I had 50 days to work on just me and all of it. And then I learned that, I have to deal with the drinking first and then the trauma.
And then get rid
of it.
of
That makes more sense to me.
And I think as a woman, as a mom, as you know, we talked about all these roles and definitions that we have. One of the things that a lot of us women don't think that we have the ability to do is be selfish. And I love hearing from you. First of all, I hear twice from you that, again, you don't necessarily know the reason why, but you did something twice, and that was to ask for help. And that saved your life. It put you into treatment, and it maintained your recovery out of treatment, is what I'm hearing. And then allowing yourself in treatment to just be selfish, to literally just do the work for yourself, which I know I'm a mom, I'm a working mom. I was working for a Fortune 100 company when I was in active addiction. And so many times we just put ourselves last. It's just what we do. I don't know if you can relate to that.
Then we're supposed to, though. We're supposed to be selfless human beings. And so sorry, but that's how we break ourselves. I broke myself good. So it's the same thing with like the mask in the airplane. Seriously, you have to feed yourself before you can help anybody else. You really do. And that means you take care of you no matter what, at all costs. And that's what I do with my sobriety now. Like, that comes first beyond anything else. Because if I don't have that, I have nothing.
And as a result, you're there for the people in your life.
I am present.
Yeah.
Really cool. Yeah.
So I want to circle back a little bit. I want to go backwards a little bit, because you mentioned when you moved to, I can't pronounce the town that you live in, but that there was kind of an instant culture, I think you said rosé all day, like the mommy wine culture. Can you talk a little bit about how your drinking was maybe leading up to that move, and then how that experience was for you with those other neighborhood women?
Yeah, I think that it's more yeah, it's so socially acceptable in my surroundings. So we have wineries everywhere.
Mhm.
And it's a social activity. It's a lot of fun. And I think that you just get it just gets ingrained in you that it's okay.
Mhm.
And you go for like liquid lunch, they would call it, or stuff like that. And then you go pick up your kids. It just doesn't make sense to me now.
Yeah.
But it made perfectly good sense to me then. It was like, oh, we have to cope, we have to deal with them. I need a drink to deal with them.
Right.
What?
Right.
Why? Like I for now, I'm like, I don't know how I did that. And I am so sorry to my children for doing that. My daughter and I are so insanely close. We're so tight. I'm lucky that she still loves me. But she would come home and she would be like, you've had a glass of wine. And she'd
Mhm.
look at me and she would know, she would feel it, right?
Sure.
I was like, oh honey, I've had a bottle. Like that's what I'm thinking in my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah.
And I don't understand it. And it's because once you have the one drink, if you have a problem with alcohol, you can't stop.
Yeah.
You just
Yeah.
can't stop, right?
And I
Um,
think it's like, you know, the Jim Rohn quote, right? Like, we're the sum of the five people that we surround ourselves by. For me, and what I'm hearing in your story and so many other stories, is that it works the opposite way, right? And so for you, for a period of your addictive drinking years, it was this community of women that you were surrounding yourself by, and you became exactly that. For me, it was a client of mine that was there were hundreds of them. It was a large kind of account base. But the culture was, we just get shit faced from the time we wake up to the time we go to bed, if we go to bed, you know? And I think people that have struggled the way that you have struggled, have trauma, have things that haven't been dealt with, to have that feeling of belonging, right? You came out of the womb feeling like you didn't belong, quite literally. And so that hold of a community where we feel we belong, whether it is people becoming entrepreneurs and making millions of dollars or people drinking themselves to death, doesn't matter. It's just that feeling of belong.
it is. And you know what? And you do everything you can when you have that kind of issue, the worthiness issue, all of it. You do everything you can to belong.
Mhm.
And the only time I felt like myself when I was drinking, which is so sad. Like I didn't know who the authentic Julie was.
Mhm.
I had no idea.
Mhm.
And I just knew who she was when I was drinking.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I hate that girl now.
Yeah.
Hate that girl now. I love this person that I'm unraveling and uncovering, and it's
Mhm.
fun. I get curious and I get to explore, and I get to help other women do that.
Yeah.
And if I wouldn't have stopped drinking, I wouldn't have found her.
No.
Yep.
Yeah. What would you say are some of the challenges? So you left treatment. It sounds like you've been sober since.
Yeah.
What would you say some of the biggest challenges you've had post sobriety have been in the past? Now it's almost 3 years.
Years.
I know, yay.
Oh, honey, the challenges. I'm so proud of myself for staying sober, but I left my husband. I have gone through a divorce, which was really hard, and it was not wasn't something that I wanted
Mhm.
to do. I didn't think I would ever do it, but it was something I needed to do to save myself.
Mhm.
And just to honor myself and my true being is something I had to let go of, something I did love, but it wasn't good. So
Yes.
I found that that was something I had to deal with, and that was hard.
Mhm.
That was probably the hardest part, was that, I
Yeah.
would say. Um, but
Thank you for sharing that too, because I think that there is a false expectation that when we find sobriety, everything magically falls into place. And especially our relationships, that's the first thing people want to be fixed. And what I'm sorry for the pain that you've been through, but I'm also seeing a woman that isn't her authentic self right now as a result of it. And so I just want to thank you for sharing that piece of your story, because no, it doesn't always work out the way we think it's going to work out. But kind of if we're open to just seeing where our path is going to go and lay, we a lot of the times are going to stumble upon something even greater. So
true. So true. And I think it's really important for women to know this. And so by doing that, I also gave myself permission to forgive myself for my part of what I did in that marriage. But I was also not going to allow them off the hook.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't just my drinking. Let's just be clear.
Yep.
People that drink the way I did are not in happy marriages. Like, to be honest, your needs aren't getting met somehow. And it doesn't just get fixed by you not drinking.
Yeah.
You have to work on yourself and you have to build it and you have to fix it. And if you still don't have what you need, it's just time to go.
Mm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And your relationship with your children now, you mentioned your daughter, y'all are like besties, it sounds like. How's your son doing?
Oh, he's so good. He's thriving now too. He had a difficult spell too. He, like I said, he's on the spectrum. We've had to deal with an additional diagnosis on top of that while I've been sober, and I was sober for it. So this was so wicked. But he's doing incredibly well, and we've got him going right on track. And my relationship with him is wonderful. I'm just blessed with the support and the love that they give me. And yeah, mumming is my favorite thing. Like it's just me. It's my life. I love it.
Yeah. So you weren't kidding. There's a lot of twists and turns in your story. If you could think of one of the pivotal moments, I'm not going to say it's like the pivotal, because it sounds like there's a lot, obviously, that have brought you to where you are today. But think about a version of yourself, whether it was moving, to the mommy wine culture, whether it was the teenage years, I'm not sure what it was. And if there was a piece of advice that you could give that version of yourself today, what would it be?
I think that if there was any advice I could give any of the series of Julies, it would honestly be speak up. Don't hold it in. Just let it out and be heard. And as long as you do that, you're probably living from an authentic place.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's what saved you, is when you asked for help.
When I started doing it. Yeah. And it takes practice, but when you start doing it, you start shedding the masks, and you stop acting like the person that you thought you were supposed to be. You start actually just living in your truth. Like, I'm just Julie. This is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. Okay. Now, as somebody who has been through the journey yourself and still going through it, because we're all going through this forever, and as somebody that works with individuals, to help kind of reduce that rock bottom and help them shave some years off of their addictive life, if there was a single rule or maybe law that you could create about addiction, now this is hypothetical, so we're assuming that it's enforceable and people are going to follow it, what would that be?
This is my piece that I love sharing with the ladies that I work with and the men. But basically, you're either protecting your sobriety or you're protecting your addiction. You cannot do both.
Can you just say that again?
You're either protecting your sobriety or you're protecting your addiction. You cannot do both.
That's really powerful. That's really powerful. Julie, I'm so grateful that we got to kind of take a window into your story and your past and your present, and excited to see where your future goes. I would love to hear from you. If listeners want to get in touch with you, are you working on any projects right now? Tell us what we need to hear about you.
If anyone ever wants to get a hold of me, you can check out my website at mysoberself.ca. Also, send me an email. My contact info is all in there. I am currently coaching and helping other people recover and become their authentic selves. I work with She Recovers as well as She Walks Canada. So please take a look at those as well. And yeah, that's it. That's me.
Oh, that's amazing. And those will be in the show notes, so you don't have to like scribble them down right now. But Julie, just cannot thank you enough for opening up and sharing. And I think sharing so many pieces of your story that, like, again, you are stepping into your authentic self right now. And quite frankly, from screen to screen, you're glowing, but there's a lot of struggle and anguish and that came behind that, and probably still comes ahead of it as well. And I think that's the challenge in recovery, is acceptance and knowing that we're not just getting rid of all the bad stuff, right? It's more that, I'm going to use the word again, stepping into your authentic self so that you know how to raise your hand and ask for help and to deal with it. So I don't know if you have anything else to add before we close.
You know what? It's just that. It's listen to what your body is telling you. Listen to what your gut is saying to you, and just honor it. Just make that promise to yourself that you will honor yourself. And from there, it'll all fall into place. Sobriety's hard. It's not easy, but you can find it. And it just takes a little bit of work and the right support. You need to connect with other people. You cannot do it alone. You just can't.
You're not meant to.
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. Well, thank you so much, Julie. I'm so happy that we've connected, and I'm so glad that I found a new friend today.